In the late 1980s, humanity was roughly 10 years away from global blindness, exploding skin cancer epidemics, and the total collapse of the world's food supply. Then, suddenly, everyone stopped talking about it. Not because the threat was fake, but because we quietly pulled off the greatest invisible rescue mission in human history. Hit follow right now if you want the unfiltered truth about how we actually saved the planet. Leaning in, voice dropping to an intense whisper. Think about the world right now. Every single day, we are bombarded with apocalyptic headlines. Climate anxiety, rising sea levels, burning forests. It feels relentless, doesn't it? It feels like humanity is trapped in a slow-motion car crash that we just can't steer out of. But if you were alive in the 1980s, there was only one phrase that sent a genuine chill down the spine of every parent, scientist, and world leader on Earth: the ozone hole. Back then, school textbooks were updated to show terrifying maps of a gigantic, expanding purple void over Antarctica. News anchors spoke in hushed, somber tones. People were throwing away their hairsprays, throwing away their deodorant cans, and looking up at the sky as if the atmosphere itself was dissolving right above their heads. And then, total silence. If you ask a teenager today about the ozone hole, they will probably give you a blank stare. If you ask a millennial, they might tell you, "Oh yeah, whatever happened to that? Was it just media hype?" Scoffs with a dry laugh. Media hype? Absolutely not. The threat was terrifyingly real, and the story of why nobody talks about it anymore isn't because science lied to you. It's because we stood on the absolute edge of a global catastrophe, and against all odds, we won. To understand how close we came to the brink, you have to understand what the ozone layer actually does for you every second of your life. Imagine Earth floating in the freezing, radiation-soaked void of space. The sun gives us light and warmth, but it also blasts out lethal ultraviolet radiation, specifically UVC and high-energy UVB rays. If those rays hit unshielded organic tissue, they don't just give you a mild sunburn, they shatter DNA strands, mutate living cells, blind compound and mammalian eyes, and sterilize plant life. The only reason you can step outside into the sunlight right now without your skin blistering in 5 minutes is a whisper-thin blanket of gas floating in the stratosphere, 15 to 30 kilometers above our heads. That's the ozone layer. It is made of ozone molecules, 3 oxygen atoms bonded together, or $0.03. Out of every 10 million air molecules, only about 3 are ozone. That is it. A layer so thin that if you compressed it down to sea level pressure, it would be about as thick as a single coin. That tiny, fragile, coin-thin shield is all that stands between complex life on Earth and a dead, scorched wasteland. Tone shifts to frustration and disbelief. So, how did we almost destroy it? We didn't do it with nuclear bombs or massive industrial fires. We did it with something far more innocent: air conditioners, refrigerators, and cans of hairspray. Back in the 1920s, an American engineer named Thomas Midgley Jr. helped invent a miraculous class of synthetic chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. Before CFCs, early refrigerators used toxic, explosive gases like ammonia and sulfur dioxide. If your fridge leaked in 1925, your whole family could choke to death in their sleep. CFCs changed everything. They were non-toxic, non-flammable, dirt cheap to produce, and completely stable. They seemed like a chemical miracle. Companies stuffed CFCs into everything: hairspray, spray paint, shaving cream, foam insulation, air conditioning units, and industrial cleansers. By the 1970s, millions of tons of CFCs were being sprayed directly into the atmosphere every single year. Because CFCs were so chemically stable, they didn't break down in the lower atmosphere. They just floated upward, slowly, silently, drifting higher and higher for years until they crossed into the stratosphere. And that is where the trap snapped shut. In 1974, 2 brilliant chemists, Mario Molina and F. Sherwood Rowland, published a theoretical paper warning that when CFCs reach the upper atmosphere, intense solar ultraviolet light breaks them apart, releasing raw chlorine atoms. Now, chlorine in the stratosphere isn't just a simple pollutant. It acts as a hyper-aggressive chemical catalyst. A single chlorine atom will attack an ozone molecule, strip away an oxygen atom, destroy the ozone, and then walk away completely unharmed, ready to do it again. and again, and again. A single chlorine atom can destroy over 100,000 ozone molecules before it is finally scrubbed from the air. Imitation of corporate pushback, tone turns sharp. Did the world stop using CFCs when Molina and Rowland warned them? Of course not. The chemical industry fought back with ruthless intensity. Billion-dollar corporations called the ozone theory a science fiction tale, utter nonsense, and an orchestrated smear campaign by competitors. DuPont, the giant chemical producer, took out full-page newspaper ads claiming that no hard proof existed and that switching away from CFCs would destroy the global economy. For a decade, the warning was ignored. Politicians debated, corporations delayed, the public moved on, until May 1985. 3 scientists from the British Antarctic Survey, Joe Farman, Brian Gardner, and Jonathan Shanklin, were reviewing routine atmospheric data collected over Halley Bay in Antarctica. They noticed something so extreme that they assumed their instruments were broken. The ozone levels over Antarctica hadn't just dipped by 1 or 2%. During the Antarctic spring, ozone levels had plunged by over 40%. The loss was so severe that NASA satellite systems had actually missed it at first. Why? Because NASA's data processing software had been programmed to automatically discard measurements that were unbelievably low, assuming they were sensor errors. When scientists went back and rechecked the raw, unfiltered satellite data, they gasped. There was a giant, expanding hole in the shield protecting the planet, whispering intensely. If left unchecked, computer models projected a horrifying future by the middle of the 21st century. By 2060, 2/3 of the world's ozone layer would be completely gone. In places like Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, or London, standing outside in the sun for just 5 minutes would cause severe third-degree sunburns. Skin cancer rates would skyrocket by over 800%. Eye cataracts would cause mass blindness in humans and wild animals alike. Worse yet, the ultraviolet radiation would destroy agricultural crops and slaughter marine phytoplankton, the foundation of the entire ocean food web. We weren't looking at a bad weather forecast. We were looking at the collapse of global civilization. So, what happened next? Why aren't we wearing radiation suits today? Tone turns triumphantly energetic. Because humanity actually listened. In 1987, world leaders gathered in Canada and drafted the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. Think about how remarkable this was. At the height of the Cold War, with ideological tensions burning between superpowers, world leaders sat in a room, looked at the scientific consensus, and agreed to completely phase out the chemicals that powered their modern manufacturing, refrigeration, and consumer markets. Ronald Reagan, who was president of the United States at the time, was a staunch opponent of government regulations. But Reagan had recently undergone surgery to remove skin cancer from his nose. He understood the biological risk instantly. Across the Atlantic, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was a trained chemist who immediately grasped the terrifying physics of stratospheric breakdown. Together, they pushed for aggressive action. The Montreal Protocol was signed, and eventually, every single nation on Earth, all 197 UN member states, ratified the treaty. It became the first, and to this day the only, universally ratified treaty in human history. Chemical companies were forced to innovate. Safer alternatives were invented. CFCs were systematically banned worldwide. Tone shifts to a mysterious twist. But the story doesn't end there. There was a secret plot twist that almost ruined everything just a few years ago. In 2018, scientists working for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, noticed something bizarre in their atmospheric tracking stations. The global decline of a specific dangerous gas called CFC-11 had suddenly slowed down by 50%. Someone, somewhere on Earth, was secretly manufacturing thousands of tons of banned CFCs in direct violation of international law. It was an environmental crime thriller played out in real time. Atmospheric detectives mobilized. Using air monitoring stations in South Korea and Japan, they tracked the chemical plumes backwards across the Pacific Ocean, pinpointing the exact coordinates. Clandestine insulation factories operating in eastern China. International pressure exploded. Environmental investigators moved in, the clandestine factories were raided and shut down, and within 2 years, global emissions of CFC-11 plummeted right back to historical lows. The enforcement system worked. So, Where do we stand right now? Warm, informative tone. According to the latest UN scientific assessment report, the ozone layer is officially on the mend. If current policies remain in place, ozone levels over the northern hemisphere and mid-latitudes are projected to fully recover by the year 2040. Over the Arctic, full recovery is expected by 2045, and over Antarctica, where the damage was the most catastrophic, the hole is projected to fully close and return to 1980 levels by around 2066. And here is the incredible bonus. Because CFCs are also super greenhouse gases thousands of times more potent than carbon dioxide, the Montreal Protocol accidentally prevented up to 1 full degree Celsius of global warming. It is literally the single most effective climate action ever taken. So why don't people talk about the ozone hole anymore? Sociologists call it the prevention paradox. When a public crisis is handled so successfully, when global policy works so seamlessly that the disaster never materializes, people assume the threat was exaggerated or never existed in the first place. We forget the terror because we fixed the problem before it could destroy us. The story of the ozone hole proves something profoundly hopeful. It proves that when humanity sets aside political division, listens to scientific reality, and holds corporate polluters accountable, we are capable of fixing even the most astronomical problems. We didn't save the ozone layer by luck. We saved it because we chose to. Now I want to ask you a question. Do you believe humanity could ever come together like this again to solve modern climate change? Or was the ozone layer a one-time miracle that will never repeat? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that follow button, and I'll see you in the next one.